Hey everyone. I had this idea for another video series, and I'm pretty shamelessly stealing this from some electrical engineering channels that I follow. They do these repair videos sometimes where they'll take like a broken electronic device and without any, um, you know, looking at it beforehand or anything like that, you watch the process of troubleshooting this thing that's wrong. And so I'm thinking, I always learn a huge amount from that because I watch somebody's process. How do they approach these problems? And so for me, I'm like, that might be kind of cool. I'm working on a problem, I'm working on projects. A lot of these videos that I'm doing are for the projects that I'm working on. And so I'm like, well, I'm having this interesting problem. Why don't I just turn on the camera? Fire up OBS and watch this process. And I'll just let this go for a while. And then what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll kind of edit it a little bit, mostly to take out a lot of like staring at code and that sort of stuff. But I'm not going to edit the process. So hopefully you'll see the process itself. I'll show you very briefly. I'll build this in debug mode. So, here's the thing. I'm just going to here I'm supposed to be building a ship. So I'm just going to lay a bunch of tiles to build this ship. I'm going to save. I'm going to actually see if this works here. Yeah, okay, so this works. I'm going to run. And so what this does is it puts me into this mode where I can kind of see stuff. And there'll be dudes and stuff wandering around here, but this is the ship itself. That's the idea. And the actual issue was if I zoom way out, I was getting, it's probably going to be horrible now because I have OBS running. Yeah, 8 frames a second. That's bad. It wasn't that much better. It was like 12 or 15 or something. So it was really bad. So I was going to run it through the profiler and say, hey, is there some low-hanging fruit that's bad? I'm pretty sure I know what it is. I'm rendering a lot of tiles, and I think I just need to optimize that. That's something I've been needing to optimize for a while. So I think it's just that, but I wanted to just kind of run it. You can see it's fine as I'm down here, even on this. And this is debug mode, so this is kind of garbage already. So let's, I want to figure out okay, what is going on? What can I do? So I killed this and I said, great, let's go to, profile mode. So profile works exactly like release mode, except I can profile it. It just enables the profiling stuff. So I run this guy and it basically does the same thing, right? And I can just crank all this. So a couple of issues, which I think are related, is if I add a couple of things here, I do save and then I'll change these guys and I'll do load, it clears everything. So it tells me that it's not actually saving for some reason and I don't know why. So if I hit run, crash. So that's bad. So if I debug this program, this takes me here, and this is where it took me before. This pointer, which you can maybe see down here, is null. This is this pointer here. I'll scroll left a little bit. Here it is. It's null. It's probably not good. So that's our issue, right? We're calling some function on some null thing. And I can step out one step and I can see where am I. So this object list resource is null. And I'm kind of in a weird place. It's not really showing me where it is. But so if we trace where this guy comes from, and this is the point, this is as far as I got. At this point, I'm like, hey, this might be an interesting time to turn on the camera. So now you're all caught up. So my thought process, so this is broken. Obviously, this is null. So if I come back up here, here's where it's being grabbed. It's being grabbed from my resource system. Now, this is really interesting because this is true. So true says, if we've gotten to this point, force load this resource. So the resource system, it runs on another thread, and usually what it does is it tries to load a resource, asynchronously, so that I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to, I can just load a resource and not have to slow down the whole program and grind the whole thing to a halt. At this point, where are we? We're loading a whole layer. So we're loading one of the layers in the world. And so I don't really care. I just want to force this thing to get. This tells me it probably can't find the file. That's almost certainly what it is. This is the path. So it's actually easier to probably see it over. Oh God, no, it's not. You can kind of see it over here. But if I hover over this guy, here I'll zoom in again and hover. Data Global World Room Atlas. Oh yeah, okay. So I'm pretty sure I know what the problem is. This would also explain why it's not saving and loading. So let's talk about how that works. These are differences between release and debug mode. So I have a bin folder, which I'll zoom in on a little bit so you can kind of see it. This folder contains all of, like, this is essentially the folder. The idea is that this is the folder that would ship, sort of. I still have a lot of cleanup and stuff that has to happen in here, and certain files don't quite, like, you know, the debug file is not going to be shipped. But this is essentially where the game assets live. So if I go into data, global, world, room atlas, it's probably one of these guys, right? Yeah, one of these ship layouts is what I just did. So if I go back here, you know, we can kind of come back up here and we can see it is export room layout.bos, export, wait, did I say room layout or ship layout? Ship layout, sorry. So it's this guy. It's basically these three. And these are the files that I generated based on placing, these are the world files. And so I place these based on just, you know, placing the tiles. And so it generates these files that my engine can load. Okay, so what's the problem? Well, the problem is in release mode, it doesn't care about this folder at all. It cares about this. This is a zip file. This is basically it's the exact same file. It's just in a resource zip. So that's the problem. Cool. So now we have to fix it. Well, the fix, hopefully, is pretty simple. I honestly just have to remember how the hell all this stuff works. Oh, and it died. That's fine. If I load this guy and I do this layer path, the problem is that this is a resource path. So the way that my resource system works is this global path here is the root of the resource system. So if I wanted to load, say, you know, this texture, I would load textures / shipbuilder / bridge icon.png. That's the actual resource I would type in, because it's all through this thing. And then it just, under the covers, figures out, does it load it from the file system or does it load it from this, like, resource packed file? So the problem is that I'm saving it in the resource system, and I don't currently support that. So what are my options? Well, one, I could support it. You know, I could support writing to the resource system. That seems wrong. I don't really think I want to do that. Another option is I could write it somewhere else, which is, I think, the right option. So I don't have it here. Well, I'll show you another project very briefly. If I go in here and I go in bin, you'll notice there's a saves folder. This is where the saved games are. So there's already certainly a precedence for how this stuff works. So I think that's what I want to do. The first step is to dig through what's actually happening here and walk through the code path. So this load and insert layer is kind of the workhorse of it that digs through. But let's start at the very top. So at the very top, here, I'll run this. There's this on run button clicked. And so this run button that you saw right here, when this run button is clicked, this function gets called. So this is going to queue an event that says, this is your world path, this is your layer path. And this world file is a thing that I've created, which is just the test layered ship. So it's basically a star field and an empty second layer. And then this layer path is the ship that we built, as I've said. So this ship layout.lay is the thing. And so this is the issue. We want to change this with something more local that's not inside of this resource pack. This event, if I search for this guy, is caught, here it is. So, well, there's this one. So register listener, this function call says, I want to register this function to be called when this event gets triggered, and that's the only place that it's actually happening. So this function gets called when that event is triggered. This calls load world, so it'll load the actual world file, and it calls that on the world file, and then it does load and insert layer. So that's just the communication happening. Load and insert layer, this handy comment tells us that it loads a layout file and inserts it into the appropriate layer. And note that this will not add a new layer, it will overwrite what is already there. So what it's going to actually do is it's going to load the star field. This is the default layer, and then it's going to slap all this stuff on a layer on top of it. So that's what that insert layer is. So I think what I want to do is I want to be able to, maybe not in the event, I'm trying to figure out where it is. Somewhere I need to be able to say that this is whether or not this is a resource path or an absolute path. Let's do this. Let's set this up so that I can say, bool is resource path or something like that. Layer file. Oops. I kind of want to be able to make this default, but also I sort of don't care right now. Maybe this is the right way to do it. Okay, we'll just do this. Is resource path. There's kind of a lot going on. I mean, I could do it. Like, I could basically rewrite all this stuff, but like this resource gives me kind of a lot. It is a raw file resource, which is amusing. So maybe it's per resource? I kind of don't like the idea of certain things going outside. I kind of don't like that. That having been said, literally save file interface, open for write. Here's where I just spin up a file just happily out of nowhere. So maybe this isn't a huge deal, and there's certainly precedence. But I'm not super happy about this. Maybe there's another way. So here's the resource proxy. If I go back out here where I just was, like I'm looking at this a little more, I think maybe the right thing to do, and I don't know if this is actually true, I think there might still be some value in going through the resource system. So it uses this resource proxy. This is basically a proxy object that acts as a placeholder for your actual resource. And the loader thread will just load it, and then this thing will just magically gain the thing. And so down here you can see I call get. And what get does is tries to get the actual resource. Get will either return the resource or null, one or the other. You can kind of see how this like whole thing works. So that, down here, I can pass in true, and true basically says force it to load. So anyway, if I look at the resource proxy, I think one thing that might be reasonable is if I add something in here that says, like maybe when we set up the path or something, that says this is, what type of resource is this? Yeah, I don't know. I'll dig into it a little more. So I'm finding myself writing this kind of like really shitty code. Where, here I'll show you, I actually reverted it. Where like so cache resource, I'm passing in a thing, and then in here I did like an if check to see, hey, is this, the type of resource, like, is this a resource path thing? If it is, then we push it as we normally do. Whoops, not here, here. Otherwise, we push it to like some other queue, and it was just getting really shitty for just one place where I need this particular functionality, and maybe a second one if I felt like I really wanted a second one for save games. If I felt like loading a game really needed to go through the resource system. This seems stupid. Then I started thinking about, so here I'm basically like, the way that resources are loaded they're loaded in these thread safe queues, and like it's a queue. You can see the type def up here. It's a queue of resource ID. So, I started thinking like, well, what am I actually trying to do? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be able to say, hey, this means, this type of path is this thing. So I'm like, well, do I like search the path and find something? And I think that's kind of the right direction that I'm going to go in. But okay, here's kind of what I'm thinking. So as I said before, typical path might be something like textures, I don't know, ship, wall. I don't know. I'm just making something up, right? PNG. This might be this is what I would actually send in. This is the actual, string that I would send in. So I'm thinking, and this is like super simple, is it would be something like dot slash ships slash layout dot lay, or whatever this whole thing is. And so what I would do internally is I would say, does it start with a dot, right? If index 0 is a dot, that means it is relative to the exe. And so I think this is the thing I'm going to basically switch on. The only thing that I don't like about it is it's a little wonky, which is to say that there's kind of this magic symbol here. That's kind of what I don't like about it. I'm going to write this up. I'm going to see what this looks like, and I'll check in with you later. Okay, so I've implemented this. Basically, what I did is I went here to, let's see, in the Starship Builder state, here at the top I have these static const expression paths. These are the actual paths where the data is saved. All I did was I changed them with our new dot slash whatever, and I'm going to throw them in ship export, ship layout. So the real crux of the change is here in load one resource. So like when the resource loader processes, you can probably be const, yeah. When the resource loader processes, it basically loops, it copies over the queue of like, hey, these are the resources I'm supposed to be loading, and it will then just churn through all of them. And all it does is it calls load one resource, getting the resource file. If that resource was successfully loaded, it tells the resource manager, hey, I've loaded it by pushing it to a loaded resources queue. When the main thread gets a tick, like the next time that the main thread resource manager gets a tick, it'll basically process and do the like main thread stuff. Load one resource is the thing that we care about. So I've refactored this. This used to be kind of a big function. It had all this stuff in it. And I've refactored it a little bit into two stages. The first stage is to try and load the file. So it figures out what resource it is based on the extension of the file, and then it tries to load the resource here. So this load raw resource file is a new function I created. So once it's loaded that file into this raw resource data, so down here, where am I? Yeah, load raw resource file. So all this does, this is the new code. So this is, resource paths that start with a dot are always loaded directly from the hard drive. They are relative to the exe, not the standard resource path. And so all this does is it says, hey, if this first thing is, if index 0 is this dot, then I try and open the resource file. If I can't, obviously, I bail. Then I get the data size, so I read the data size from the file and I allocate it. If it's an ASCII resource, it needs to have an extra thing. So that's actually kind of fun. Let's say that I'm loading an ASCII file, a text file, and it looks like this, that has 4 values, and those values, are like rats or something. So I'll get 4 back. But if I load this into a string, right, this is just going to keep going because there's garbage here, right? What I really need is I need, this little terminator 0. So I have to allocate an extra byte for that. That's what this little wonkiness is. And then I set that terminating 0 here. I just set the one thing. Then I read it. So this is me reading the file, and I sort of verify that I read the appropriate amount. I close the file, and then that's it. Like, I'm done. So I've just read the file directly here. This I'm not going to go into. This uses my other resource stuff. This is the essentially the else case. This just does what it used to do. So the only real change was a little refactor to pull these functions apart and this thing. That's all I've done. I have no idea if this works. It compiled. I think I made a quick change, but yeah, so it compiles. Let's see if it works. Okay, it didn't crash. It's a good sign. Let's do my thing. I'm in debug mode, so save. Okay, nothing blew up. No, this is the wrong folder. Export. Okay, they're here. They made it to the export folder. That's good. So far, so good. Let's make a couple changes. Load. Okay, it loaded. That's great. And I didn't break the resource system as a whole. One of the somewhat nice things, I guess, about working on such a core, like those functions are called constantly. They're called for every single resource you see here. Run. Oh God. Okay. Well, this all works. This looks good. Good times. Let's switch it back to shipbuilder and everything looks good. Okay. Looks like I'm fine. Now for the moment of truth, we're going to build SFML profile. And the build is done, so we work. I'm just going to run it. Let's see what happens. I'm going to fill it up. I filled it up with this guy because it has a lot of objects. I think it's the one with the most objects. Save. Okay, we didn't blow up. Oops, I didn't. Okay, load. Yeah, good times. Run. It didn't work. Oh, man. Why do you hate me so much? Is it the exact same thing? Yep, it's the same thing. Data global. Okay, so it's using the old paths. That I find very interesting. So it's loading the wrong file. Cast event. Oh, where is this event coming? Right. Lua might be screwing us. I feel like that's what's happening. This seems wrong. Right? It should be / with our new thing, ship export / like whatever this is, ship layout. This might be better because I don't care if you load this thing. It's this layout that needs to change, I think. Okay, great. Data changes are fun. Oh, that's from the previous run. Let's just make sure. Yeah, okay. We'll load, runs. We'll run, we still crash. Sweet. Okay, so let's go back up here. This layer file, oh, not you. This layer file should be correct. Oh, why do you hate me? World, room, Alice. Nope, it's definitely not the right ship layout file. Is this layout file just ignored? Layer path. Yeah, ship layout. I feel like this layout file, this layer path is being ignored. I'm going to dig into this a little further. So I've stepped through here. This is the actual build event. So Lua sends this event, and the data looks fine here, right? Ship export. I'm doing something stupid somewhere. Okay, well, let's look at the other side of things. Okay, so this is our function. Here's our catching of the function. And it's still correct. All right, here it is run. I haven't tried it yet, but let's see what... Oh no, my UI is gone. What the... God damn it. Okay, so the issue was sort of hilarious. I'll redo it. I think this is the issue. I had a thing here. It actually just fails to parse this entire file, which is really interesting. I recently changed my Lua integration and wrote my own because I was unsatisfied with Lua Plus. Lua Plus would have thrown an exception and the whole thing would have crashed. My Lua thing will just silently fail. And so it's interesting, if I get a syntax error, if Lua itself throws an exception, I silently catch it in release mode. That felt like the better thing to do. maybe that's a thing to think about, or maybe it's a configuration option to throw in there. That if the configuration option is set, it'll throw fatal errors or something. That's tomorrow's problem. I actually have no idea if this is going to work. All I did was make the change I saw, and then I re-zipped everything up, and there we go. There's all my UI. Although bonus points for my system doing the thing it was designed to do, which was silently fail, that's pretty sweet. Okay, great. So that worked, and it ran. We're here. So my fix made it. Yeah, this looks good. Oh my god. Okay, bug fixed. The next thing that I need to do is check all this stuff in. Maybe you've never seen this before, but here's how I check things in. Oh, you see I've already caught something. Bleach utils, the VCX proj changed because I added a new file. So I have to go back in here. I forgot to add the file. Let's add it. Add. And here it is. It's been, oh, come back to me. It's been added. So I already caught an error. I always do this. Every time I check in, I go to commit or whatever it is in your system that you're using, and I diff every single file. Great, that's fine. The filter, I'm sure, is just the same. Yep. I diff everything. I don't need to diff this guy because I just added him, but that's fine. You know, resource database.h, what changed in here? Okay, right. I got sick of these, so I kind of made these more real, and I made this match what the CPP said, so that's all fine. File resource interface. I made this default because I like that better, and I added a bunch of finals because final is good. You know, and you probably can't see this. I mean, I could zoom in if there's interesting stuff. This is just what I do. I dig through, and I'm like, is this all the things? Like, did I expect all this stuff to change? You know, and this all looks good. This all looks like stuff I wanted to change. Sometimes it reminds me of stuff. Like I want to change some of these ID strings so that they're a little more correct. Yeah, this all looks good. Resource proxy change. I added just a couple no accepts, and I probably did the same thing here. And that's it. That's everything that changed on the engine side. And then what I would do is I would do the same thing. I changed some stuff on the actual game side. So I'd go in here. I have to scroll down because I have a thing. Nope, nothing there. And see, oh, what did I change here? Well, I deleted device equals D3D. This, I have long since deleted that. Or this is no longer a thing. It's set in the compiler as opposed to in data. Right. So actually, there's a bunch of stuff here, right? I want to get rid of pretty much all of this. I actually want to kind of revert that and just uh-oh, that's actually maybe not what I wanted. Hopefully this was useful. I have no idea if it was, but I hope it was useful. This was me actually trying to sit here and debug and fix like an actual issue. Like I just ran into this issue, had no idea what was going on, thought it would be a good time to turn on the camera and just this is how I worked through it. Okay, catch you next time.